Oh, City Love. He was wearing a fanny pack the first time I saw him. A grown man wearing a fanny pack. And it wasn't ironically, not the way that you would see some hipster on the loop wearing a fanny pack to make a statement. This was more agonizingly sincere. It was more like Rick Steves does Europe. And it was one of those moments where you just take stock of the situation and the only thought left in your mind is, how did my life come to this? So in order to help you understand how my life came to the fanny pack moment, I actually have to rewind to the summer that I was 19, turning 20. That was the summer that I met the one. Capital T, capital O, the one. At least ostensibly. He was tall and egotistical and loud and thought he was fantastic, and I was strikingly eager to think he was awesome. So naturally that was a match made in heaven. And we decided that it was love. I mean, flowers bloomed and fireworks exploded and there was sunshine and glitter everywhere we went, and it was going to last forever. But over the next 7 years, as Mr. Right turned into Mr. Controlling, and then Mr. Controlling turned into someone cold and frightening that I hardly recognized, I realized it wasn't love, and it wasn't going to last forever. I remember the night that I finally left. I ended up at my friend Erin's house, and I hadn't even packed a bag to bring along with me. And I was just terrified at what becomes of me now that I've left behind my relationship, my belongings, my home, my life. And ironically, even with all that long list of things that I had left behind, the final straw that broke the camel's back that night, the one that left me slumped on her floor in a heap doing the ugly cry, was the realization that I didn't even have a toothbrush for that night. And you know, in the grand scheme of things, I don't know why the toothbrush mattered so much. It's a toothbrush. I had lost a lot more than a toothbrush, but I think it was because it just exquisitely underscored that I had absolutely nothing left. Now, luckily, Erin's one of those solid Midwest Walmart shoppers, and she has never met a bargain bulk buy that she could pass up. So she had like a 20-pack of toothbrushes in her closet, and she gave me one. So that was one problem solved. I mean, my life was still in shambles, but at least I had clean teeth. If you fast forward about a year and a half after the toothbrush night, I was actually feeling successful and solid. I had rebuilt my life. And I might have even been feeling kind of young and cute, but that was short-lived. I was on this volunteer medical trip to the Dominican Republic, and I had a marginal grasp of the Spanish language. And I was sitting at the check-in table of our makeshift clinic one day when this little old local lady came up to the table, and she looked at me, and I was thinking, oh no, I'm not gonna understand anything she says, this could be a disaster. And she says, ¿Cuántos años tienes? How old are you? And I thought, I can rock this question. And I said, 28, 28. I felt good. But instead of being impressed at my Spanish prowess, like I was, she just looked sort of concerned, and she scrunched up her little old lady forehead and she asked, do you have a man? And I said, no. And she said, do you have children? And I said, no. And in my head, I'm thinking, I'm totally having a Spanish conversation right now. In my head, I was thinking, not only that, but we're like bonding on the cross-cultural, marital, social practices of our diverse homelands. And I thought it was awesome, but she, instead of thinking it was awesome, looked really worried about me. And at that point, her words start coming fast and frantic with this urgency I'd never heard in any of the island countries before, and she's like gesturing vaguely toward my uterus region. And somewhere in there, I caught her saying the phrase, ya tienes la matriz vieja y secada, which slowly translating in my head, your womb is already old and shriveled. frantically writing down phone numbers on a little piece of paper and telling me that I didn't need to worry because even though I am an old, shriveled spinster, practically the crypt keeper, she knows plenty of potent Dominican men who can impregnate even me. That's probably enough background for you to understand my state of mind when, a year and a half after that, I arrived to St. Louis, on the cusp of turning 30, perhaps with a shriveled womb, completely disequilibrated from moving 5 times in 3 years, just looking for somewhere to call home and be loved. I joined Match.com. I'm pretty convinced that anthropologists are going to look back on Match.com as the tool for social self-humiliation of our generation. It was in fact Match.com that brought me to the Muni on a Friday night last summer for an apocalyptically awkward first date with the fanny pack man. I'm just gonna go out and admit that I had broken my cardinal rule of dating, which is that you always, always make that never, ever, ever accept a date until he's proven that he has a good personality. Because that way, even if the chemistry fails, which can happen between 2 perfectly decent people, even if the chemistry fails, at least his personality can redeem the next 3 hours. But I was in such an excited hurry to hear that someone had Muni tickets, because I'd heard about the mystical Muni, that I accepted this date without the proper preamble. So as I scoped him out from across the plaza behind the Muni before the show, I realized that he was about 5'2". Because in real life, a short guy's actual height is like the square root of whatever he lists on his online dating profile. And he also was sporting facial hair like, how do I put this? Like the villain from a black and white train robbery movie. And he had a flourishing paunch, and he was wearing a pair of shorts that I haven't seen since my high school gym teacher. They were that shiny polyester football referee, kind of the, exactly. And the shorty, short, bunchy, formal diaper that just makes people uncomfortable on principle. And between those shorts and that paunch was, of course, the fanny pack. Now, as he walked me to our seats, he told me, "My mother and I have season tickets together." He said mother, like Norman Bates. From Cyprus. He went on to tell me that mother packed a snack for us. That explained the fanny pack. Did Norman Bates wear a fanny pack? And then he further told me that most of his friends actually only exist in the online virtual world. Which would explain why frequently, periodically, he would take out his iPhone and stroke it lovingly with these tiny hands. Impossibly tiny hands. Creepy, creepy tiny hands. And then apropos of nothing, he looks at me and says, "If you get cold during the show, I'll hold you close." I spent the next 3 hours leaning away awkwardly at a 45-degree angle, with my legs crossed away and my arms tucked tightly, because even if I would make eye contact with him, he would murmur things like, "We were meant to be together." So at one point during the show, I glanced over and I saw him fondling his iPhone with those tiny hands. And I found myself thinking that they looked like those little peachy plastic hands that you see on baby dolls. The baby dolls with like the big head, and then their whole body is really just made out of a little stuffed pillow. And then there's these hands from about the wrist down that are just plastic affixed to it. And I found myself having this really creepy thought that he had somehow taken those tiny doll hands and affixed them to his own wrist stumps. And in the middle of having this creepy doll hand thought, he looks at me and says, "You're so recoiled in horror because I just had this irrational thought in my head that if he thought I was a doll, he was going to amputate my hands and add them to his tiny-handed doll collection. The date did not end well. Essentially, when the show ended, I fled into Forest Park alone, contemplating the relative appeal of spinsterhood. So maybe I should end this story with a plea to the city of St. Louis, on behalf of newcomers like me, on behalf of the people who are just here looking for city love, people who might hypothetically be terrified that the fanny pack wearing tiny doll-handed man is all this city has to offer. On behalf of all of us, please, St. Louis, prove us wrong.